And good morning, good evening, wherever you may be around the nation, around the world. You are listening to the great, the one and only Supernatural Realm on the Trim Radio Network, where we cut the bull and serve the truth. Our website is WTRMradio.com, and this is the Supernatural Realm, and I'm your host, Timothy Roxbury. We're going to bring our, from time to time, co-host Chip Reichenthal here in a minute to give the bio of our guest and who we have on this evening. But man, it's going to be a great show. But at any rate, you can find Supernatural Realm on just about every podcast platform known to humankind, such as Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcast, and everywhere else. And you can also find us live right now on our Supernatural Realm Radio YouTube page, our Supernatural Realm Radio Facebook page, and the Trim Radio Facebook page as well. And we're live right now on video and audio on those platforms. And it's going to be a great show. We got Stephen Martin, and we're going to talk about being kind to one another and service to others. And man, we're going to dive into a lot of different things tonight. Chip, you there, buddy?
I sure am, Timmy. I wouldn't miss this one for the world. I actually had to mute my microphone because as I read through the bio before, I'm going to read it for all our beloved listenership and viewership. I realized that this man that is with us tonight did something that touched my heart and changed my life, and I didn't even realize that. And that's even beyond all the stuff that we're really going to get into, dealing with our supernatural realms, so to speak, and how much he's really contributed to those. Boy, I love him already. I am known him for all of 3 minutes, But we might as well tell y'all who this magnificent guest is, the new love of my life. Yes, and the other love of my life is behind me making lots of noise. That's my girl. Mwah, lots of love to her. Anyway, Stephen Hawley Martin is our guest today. Stephen Hawley Martin is here as the talk show host of a popular weekly internet podcast, The Truth About Life. You might have heard about that one. It became clear to best-selling author Stephen Hawley Martin as he interviewed dozens of near-death survivors. That's right up Timmy's alley. Timmy loves NDEs, near-death experiences. Psychics, researchers into the paranormal, as well as quantum physicists and medical doctors. And that humankind is on the cusp of a transition to a new understanding of the true nature of reality. I'm very excited about that. To share what he's learned and help speed the transition, which he believes will result in a rebirth of optimism and the world becoming a better place to live and work. See, my twin flame here. He's written well over a dozen books, many of which has achieved bestseller status on Amazon. I can top you there. I hit the New York Times worst seller list 4 times. Try that, man. Martin is a former principal of the world-renowned ad firm that created the Geico Gecko, and this is the one that really hit me, Virginia is for Lovers. That had a huge bearing on my life for a long period of time. The Martin Agency, and is currently the editor and publisher of the Oakley Press. He's the only 3-time winner of the Writer's Digest Book Award, having won first prize twice for fiction and once for nonfiction. And he's also won first prize for visionary fiction from the Independent Publisher and first prize for nonfiction from USA Book News. I guess I've got a lot of catching up to do here. But Stephen Hawley Martin is our honored guest today. We welcome him to Supernatural Realm Radio along with the great Tim Roxbury. So, Timmy, you take it away, man. while I weep here thinking about Virginia for a little while.
All right. Stephen, it's great
Uh,
to have you here.
well, thank you so much, Tim and Chip, for having me. I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it.
How did you get started in all this work that you're doing? All this fascinating work that you're doing.
Oh gosh, it really started a long, long time ago, Tim. I was brought up in a family that was they were scientifically minded folks. They believed that if you couldn't see it under a microscope, it didn't exist, and probably a lot of people still think that. But something happened to me when I was about 25 years old, when I was a young man working at an ad agency in Baltimore. I had a terrible case of the flu. I was really very sick, and I was in my apartment lying on my bed, and the bed started spinning, and suddenly I just popped out of my body, and I was looking at myself from up at the ceiling, looking down at my body on the bed. And I thought, hey, actually, I felt a whole lot better when I was up there looking down. I felt fine. And I thought, this is very strange. How can I be up here looking at my body if my brain causes my consciousness, and that's supposed to be inside my skull, but I'm not inside my skull. I'm up here. Mm-hmm. So it didn't last very long. It wasn't really a near-death experience like the classic ones are, where you go through the tunnel and you go to the light and you meet relatives that have passed before you, that sort of thing, and have a past life review and all that. And it probably lasted about maybe 30 seconds to a minute, but it was long enough to open my mind about the idea that all exists in the world is material substance, matter, and that's what the scientific materialist schooling that I had coming up, going through high school and college and studying science. That's what they told me was all that existed. And I said, well, that cannot possibly be. And so it really started me on a quest that I've been on now for a long, long time. And I've learned a lot. And so, yeah, Tim, that's how it started.
Mm-hmm. Did you look to the Bible for answers of why we're here as well?
I didn't. Family, I read a lot of the Bible, and I think that Jesus knew what he was talking about. I'm not so sure the church has really understood him
right
very well, but I think he understood what was going on. But no, I did join the Rosicrucian Society, which is a society of mystics who study metaphysics, and they know what's going on. They really do. And of course, they believe in reincarnation, which is, to me, is no longer anything. It's a fact, it exists. And that's really how we evolve through one lifetime after another. We come here to learn. But and I rose through the ranks in the Rosicrucian order. I went from novice to adept. And I read everything I could about metaphysics, and I would say probably the book that really opened my eyes, I'm sure you've read, is Life After Life by Raymond Moody, which I read back when it came out in the late 70s, I guess. And in fact, I read that in one sitting. But I looked around more in bookstores than I did in church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is with church, it would always, I grew up in a church, and it seems like, it would lead you to a question and then another question, and you really didn't really get the answers that you needed.
Well, I think the problem is that the Western religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam too, I suppose, picture God as being separate from his creation, his or her, its creation. And I don't think that's the way things really are. And I think Jesus understood that. He said, anybody who's seen me has seen the Father. He also said that whatever you do to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you do to me. He knew that all was one, that really ground of being is consciousness or mind, what I guess you would call God. But I think when I say the word God, I think of a long man with a long white beard up on a cloud, picking winners and losers, and that's not really the way I think God is. God is that mind that is in everything. It's a non-dual, transcendent reality that we live in, and so the Eastern religions understand that. Hinduism understands that. Buddhism understands that, and I think probably Jesus absolutely think he did too. And maybe he even spent some time in India at an ashram or something before he took on his. There are a lot of people who think that.
Yeah.
And there have been books written about it. Who knows? Could be.
Yeah. Do you think that mankind is on a transition, being that we're stuck in this pandemic, or the so-called pandemic that we're in?
Yeah, I do. I think we're in a transitional period. I think a lot of the crazy stuff that we see going on is all part of that. We've got everybody's got a different opinion about something, but it's you probably I know everybody's heard of the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we're moving from Pisces to Aquarius, and that's a fact. I mean, the zodiac has got 12 signs, and we spend 2,000 years in each one, and we're finishing up 2,000 years in the age of Pisces, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius. And I think that's what's happening. We're moving from a time, and I think maybe we're going to discuss Ra and the Law of One. Ra said that we're a third density reality, and the hallmark of that is that we have self-awareness, but we think that we're separate. We're each separate entities and we're moving into fourth dimensional reality, which is when we realize that really all is one, that one mind is that we're all part of that we're each aspects of it. Fractals, I think, is a good word, or holograms of that one reality. And we think we're separate because we have egos and we have memories, and we've evolved through many centuries, and we've come to, we each have a higher self, but we're all connected at some level, at the level of a collective reality. What did Carl Jung call it? The collective unconscious. I think that we're all connected there. So we're going to realize that when we are fully into the fourth dimension. We've already started moving into it, according to Ra. And, it'll take a little while, but I think we'll get there.
Yeah, I think that, you and Chip are pretty much twin souls, because everything that's in your book, Tim and I have talked about for years. And it's so wonderful to have you here with us tonight.
Well, yeah, Tim probably read it back in 1980 or 81 or whatever when it came out, and I think there are 5 books in that series, all of them channeled over a period of years. And it really, I read them. I didn't read all of them back then. I read some of it. I didn't really get into it at the time, but recently it came to my attention again, and I've gotten into it, and I think it's dead on right. I think that Ra knew what he was talking about, and that we are definitely moving into that new fourth density, I guess it's called. What do you think?
I think we are, and Chip and I talk about service to others all the time on the shows, and I produce a show called Spiritual Freedom, which is a podcast with host Richard Lawrence. He's part of the Aetherius Society, and every show, he always says be a service to others, and that's something that I think we're losing in our society today, because people are more worried about serving themselves rather than serving God or serving others.
That really is true, and I think it particularly I know we're not going to talk about politics, but I'll say both Democrats, Republicans, whatever they are, so many of them seem to be worried about themselves and getting reelected rather than really serving their constituents. And So yeah, I think it's pretty predominant on TV or the news cycle that you're seeing people who are out for themselves. But I think most people are, well, at least according to Ra, it's more likely to be a service to others, individual. And I think that's really how you achieve happiness and fulfillment or joy, is to use your talents, whatever it is that you've got that you can use to serve others, and that's how you feel fulfilled. And that's really what we're moving toward. We have become a very materialistic society. I think it has to do with that whole scientific materialism thing that I think is going away. Thank goodness, because what it really encourages is for us to focus on material things. Let's get a bigger house, a bigger car. And those things can't make you happy. What can really make you happy and give you satisfaction is putting to work what you've got, your talents, your gifts, to help others in some way. And that's when you feel fulfilled. Don't you think that's right? I mean,
that is right. I spent 20 years as a volunteer firefighter. So those 20 years I was a service to other people, and I got fulfilled spiritually and mentally. I felt honored to do that. I felt like I was whole by serving other people and serving my community. So I totally get that.
It really is. It is the way to, and I think people are going to come to that realization. And that's really my goal in the last 10 years, 15 years, is to try to get that message out. The idea that scientific materialism is based on a false premise, that the only thing that exists is material substance, matter, when in fact, Max Planck, who the founder of quantum theory, believed that really mind was the fundamental reality, the basis of everything, that everything comes from mind, including material substance. And we all come from that. We're all part of that. So I think in the 1990s that he was saying that. So it's taken us this to 90 years, I guess, to come around to where we are now, which is, I think we're moving into it. I have not had too many people argue with me recently or in the last 10 years that, the only thing that exists is matter. If you can't see it under a microscope, it doesn't exist. I don't think there are too many people who actually believe that anymore. I think that they pretend to, some of them, because they don't want to be kicked out of whatever club they belong to. But it's going away. It's going away. Do you see that too? Do you see it happening?
Yeah, I do. Chip, do you have anything to add to that? You can get a chance.
A lot. But Stephen, you had me at Virginia's for Lovers.
Yeah.
But my sense, and I love to be wrong, so you can tell me if I'm wrong about this. But my wife already did, so you don't have to. But I think that, just like the Earth rotates around the sun rotates around the galaxy. And I think as we're going from that third density to fourth density, as you mentioned earlier, and from some of the Ra writings, R.A. Ra, is that seem to be going to a much more energetic part of the galaxy. So I think that people are feeling more. They're feeling everything, and they're not used to it. And there's really nobody around them to kind of comfort them. So their primal reaction is fear and anger. They're upset because they're feeling everything, and they don't want to feel stuff. They want to not feel stuff. And we see a movement in mass media and entertainment. They're really hyping up the fear. I mean, it's hard to watch a comedy. Even the comedies now are so grossly embarrassing that you have to laugh almost as a fear response, a defense mechanism. Not because it's funny, but because it's just so uncomfortable. You can't take it, and your only reaction is to laugh. But I think because we're feeling more and not wanting to, and the media is kind of pushing all this, well, making up brand new stuff that'll kill you, that you wouldn't even think you'd have to fear about until they told you about it on some science or historical show, on some informational show, coming up with new ways to scare you. So it seems like we're in this little niche of systemic narcissism, but I think people are starting to tire of that now. But it's so refreshing to hear your viewpoint and the things that you in the trenches really doing, really messages that you're spreading, because that's, I think, what generally speaking, people are starting to look up again now for hope, for someone to set us in the right direction, for some moral or ethical compass, because we don't really have these hero figures, because even heroes are killing each other now. Superheroes are killing each other now, it's it. But because I think, as our whole solar system goes into this part of the galaxy that's a lot more energetic than what we're used to, I think our first primal reaction is to be afraid and to be angry or depressed. And we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's coming. So we really need people like you around us to remind us that, yeah, as a matter of fact, the best way out of this is to just flip a switch and say, you know what, I'm going to be loving. Instead of selfish, I'm going to see, what other people want or need. And not for any manipulative purpose, but just because we can. Do you get the sense that maybe we're traveled into a part of our galaxy that's a lot more energetic, and that's why we just seem to be feeling more of everything, or am I just dead wrong about it?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the galaxy or what, but I do believe that we are awakening. There's an awakening that's going on, and I see it around me all the time. And like you said, fear is something that can be used to control people. And the fact of the matter is there really is nothing to fear, because we are all eternal beings who happen to be having a physical experience right now. It's a temporary physical experience, but we're eternal. I mean, we're going to be around forever. There's no beginning, no end. So what's there to fear? I mean, we're going to change form. We're going to maybe exist in a non-physical reality for a while, and then we'll come back to a physical reality. And, it's just on and on. As I recall my Rosicrucian teachings, they looked at life as a sine curve, where you had, over on this side above the line that was in the middle, it was a physical existence, and below the line was a non-physical, and it was like each 140 years. So on it, if you had a lifespan of 70 years in the flesh, you would have 70 years in the non-physical realm. Now that was an average, and they said, so it can be quicker, it can be longer. Some people stayed in the non-physical realm for hundreds of years, but on average, and that made sense to me, and I think it's probably right. The University of Virginia has been studying children's memories of past lives for about 60 years, and they have over 2,500 cases. Many of them have been solved, as they say, where they've actually been able to identify the child's former life, matched up with what the child was talking about. Now, those kids tend to be had an unnatural death in the previous life and come back a lot quicker than I think would normally happen, and that's probably why they remember. They had a short-circuited life, and so they want to get back quickly to finish unfinished business or to whatever, because they felt like they were shortchanged. But there's nothing to fear, because we're going to be around forever. And to me, the message of that is, become a person that you'd like to be with, because you're going to be with yourself for a long, long time. So there you go.
My mom always tells me that is I'm on a hunt. She said, because when I go, I'm going to have a lot of unfinished business.
Yes, but say that. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, where you encourage people to leave behind a legacy they can be proud of, and if they think of it in those kinds of terms, it takes a lot of immediate pressure off of the ego, and gives them time to prepare for something like that, and something good to look forward to. It's hard to find good things to look forward to these days because, the media says all the things that you can look forward to that are horrible. But you brought up fear, and we've been talking especially for the last few weeks. Fear is fiction. It's fiction. Fear is not an actual thing. It's an imaginary thing, like perfection. There's no real thing as perfection. There's no real thing as fear. There's danger, which is a lot different and puts you into that fight or flight response situation for a good reason. But the woulda, shoulda, couldas about the materialistic world that you talk about, the search for more, it puts us in a constant state of imbalance and worry and concern. So if you realize that most of the stuff that you're afraid of or worry about will never happen, or if they do, you'll handle it better than you believe you would, then I think we could take some time to relax. I wish I went to that place you did. My father was Jewish, my mother was Southern Baptist, and so to avoid a lot of arguments, they went to a Unitarian church. I would rather have gone to that place you go to.
The Rosicrucian. Yeah, well, the Unitarian Church is, I've been there sometimes. In fact, there's a church, it's actually a Unity church, but it's very similar. I've been to both Unitarian and Unity churches. And there's one in Williamsburg that's had me down to speak a number of times about my books. And they all are very interested in and believe in reincarnation, and they study the, what is it? That channeled book about from Jesus is supposed to have come through. What is it? A Course in Miracles. And,
right.
I think they're right on. It's too bad that some of our more traditional churches can't sort of get updated a little bit. I talked about the idea of thinking that God is a separate entity, making decisions about who's going to winners and losers, and it's really not the way it is. And you should think about third density reality as the reality where we feel separate, and that's what we're leaving behind. And as you know from reading Ra, he said that third density reality is 100 times more difficult than any of the other realities.
It really is. Yeah.
Because of psychological suffering. But it needs to be this way, so that we had to develop this idea of being separate in order to develop free will. But now that we've done that, we can move on to where we realize that we're all one, and that the ideal society is where we're all working using our talents to help others. And that's when we can literally, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Well, it can be at hand if we all get that through our heads, and that's the way we go. If you see what I mean.
No, I not only do I see what you mean, I'm actually one of the people who are qualified to know exactly what you mean, because I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I specialize now in past life regression hypnotherapy, and I specialize in that not only because it's really more fascinating than losing weight or quitting smoking or more confidence on your job types of thing, but it also you don't have to believe in past lives in order to get benefits, and very therapeutic, very cathartic. It's very healing and nurturing, and it answers questions that your inner dialogue has been haunting you with for most of your life. For example, the people that are afraid of heights, chances are they had a recent past life where they died from falling off of a high platform. Fear of water. They might have drowned in a former life. But I've also recently, and this goes to your point a bit, I've had in the last couple of years now some people that have past lives that they were not human or from Earth. They actually had past lives they recall where they were, Palladian or Arcturian, or like those grays that we often hear about, or light beings. I actually had one that was a light being. And so it really kind of puts a dot on top of the I on what you're talking about. It's not just that the little kids remember a recent past life and history can back up exactly what they're saying because there's somebody on record that fits that to a T. But there's a lot of our own unconscious processes that really are dictated by past lives, and because in order to succeed, you have to do it on yourself. We have to do a lot of self hypnosis, and if we try it out on us, we can see what better works and doesn't work as we try it on others. I had a lot of lifetimes where I was killed for my beliefs. The church killed me once because I was scientific when I shouldn't have been scientific. I've been burned as a witch. I've had a lot of lifetimes or I was a monk and very dedicated to the word, more so than the other monks who were trying to find ways to make money and stuff like that. And because I tried to expose them for their corruption, they killed me. So here we are, having a platform where we can really openly talk about all these types of things, and nobody's killed me yet. So far, so good.
Well, yeah. Well, that's one of the things, what you're saying there about what happened in the past life affecting us in this life is something that the people at the University of Virginia have been studying these past life. They will go along with that. They will say that, phobias, drowning, whatever, that they often come from a past life. And one of the interesting little vignettes that I heard, I was interviewing Jim Tucker, who's now in charge of that whole program up at UVA. There were children in, I think it was Burma, who said they were Japanese soldiers in World War II and were killed, and they came back as Burmese children. And one of the things they didn't like was the Burmese food. It was too spicy for them, because they were used to sushi or whatever it was that they had been eating over, raw fish they'd been eating in Japan. So, things like that. It's pretty wild, but it's true. Absolutely true. Yeah.
We've had some trauma specialists here, some of the alternative healer trauma specialists who also believe in things that happened to us while we were in the womb. Maybe our mother had some trauma that occurred while we were in her belly still, so to speak. And so we inherited it without even realizing. Most of our beliefs we've inherited from people older than us that have been feeding that stuff to us before we had a conscience of our own, or a consciousness really that we recognize of our own.
We have a neighbor who had a little girl, and she's not even a year old yet, and she's coming up on her year. And the grandmother brought her over here, and I was outside on the porch, and she didn't even want to come close to me. and the grandmother said that she's afraid of men. Well, how would a little, not even 1-year-old little girl be afraid of men if it wasn't tied to maybe a past life? Maybe she was abused or murdered by a man.
Yeah, or it could have been something that happened to her mom while they were in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone tried to sexually assault them, while they were pregnant with that 1-year-old. So yeah, because that's a great point. That's a great point.
Because there's no possible way that not even a 1-year-old girl could be afraid of a guy.
Right.
That's not possible unless it's some sort of
Yeah.
connection.
No, it makes for a great example too.
And we also come back. We'd always come back as the same sex. That was another thing that the UA people say. And in fact, if you were a guy in the last life and you come back as a girl, you'd have a little trouble, making the transition, and could explain some of that sort of stuff that goes on. But it is a continuum where it's one life after another, and I think we're either with a particular mission to accomplish, or we come to learn certain things. We come to experience and to grow. And I think really evolution, the idea of wanting to become, to grow, to expand our consciousness is really a kind of we're born with that drive. Mm-hmm. And that's why we keep coming back. One of the reasons, of course, Buddhists would say it's other reasons, like, we want to experience the, well, and also, just the, we want to, the pleasures of the physical life, experience those again, which we do not have on the other side, I suppose. Eating good food, sex, drinking alcohol, whatever it is that you crave can bring you back. So who knows?
Yeah, we worked. I had about 7 years of my life where I was, for some reason, really attuned as a spirit medium. So I'm talking with a lot of dead people. To this day, I do tarot readings still professionally. Again, same reason for hypnotherapy. It's therapeutic. My readings are not scary. They're designed to nurture people. And, so whatever happens for the next season's worth of time, you'll have a better idea of what strengths are around you, or the things that you can lean on or depend on for help during whatever comes your way. Because forecasting, predicting the future, something that a lot of tarot readers or psychics do, because of my experiences talking to dead people, I won't do, because they were very insistent on something along the lines of what you were just talking about, how we're here to learn specific lessons. And sometimes we have extra life times because we didn't really grasp loneliness, or we really had no experience with loss or suicide or murder, or different kinds of joys and communities and inclusions, to erase preconceptions and biases that we had in other lifetimes too. But they kind of convinced me that forecasting doesn't do people any favors. It cheats them potentially out of a life lesson that they are here to learn on their own. And that's part of the whole free will thing that you mentioned earlier. Not only do you have to learn a specific lesson in this particular life, and they're not all bad. They could be great things, but you have to do it of your own free will, And if stuff just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, these mistakes that you keep making over and over and over again, eventually you're going to get it. And,
have you ever seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a wonderful allegory of what we're talking about here, where Bill Murray's character keeps coming back the same day every day with the same things happening, and he starts out as a jerk, and he handles everything poorly, and he gets a lot of people upset. But after an hour and a half of the movie, he's finally doing the right things and treating people with respect and saving people when he could have let them die or whatever. And that's when he finally gets to move on to February 3rd. He even gets the girl. So
That's right. Yes.
So I mean, that's to me, that's what is happening to us, and people do come back and have the same, what the basic law of metaphysics is that like attracts like, and you attract to you whatever it is you're sending out. Until you figure that out, you're going to keep attracting that stuff to you that maybe you don't really want to have. It's like the person who always attracts a member of the opposite sex, a partner who abuses them or treats them badly. Well, why does that happen? It probably happens because the person has a low opinion of themselves, and they attract someone to them that has that same low opinion. And once you figure that out and realize that you're a spiritual being who is really very powerful, if you just will realize it, then that's not going to happen anymore. It's so, yeah, I think you're right. We come here to learn. And sometimes it's several lifetimes before we get them.
Yeah. Stephen, you mentioned in your book that a conscious mind is all that exists, and that we are each spiritual beings having a physical experience.
That's right. Absolutely. We're eternal spiritual beings. We're fractals. We're holograms of the mind that is the ground of being of all that is. When you think of your own consciousness, you know that you're able to kind of step outside yourself and even observe your own thoughts. And when you say the word I am, who is it that you are? What is the I am? The I am is that consciousness. And that consciousness is the same consciousness that we all share. It is the one consciousness that is part of the mind that creates our reality. And that is who we are. We are the one consciousness that has had all these experiences, that has got a subconscious mind or soul that has developed over many lifetimes, that makes us feel like we're different. But in effect, when we go beyond that conscious mind, beyond that subconscious mind, to the collective universal conscious mind, we are one. We are all one. We're all connected. You've heard probably of the Akashic records.
Yes.
The Akasha, that is the memory of everyone who has ever lived, and what they've thought or done is all there. And that's where we're all connected. We're all in that. We're all part of that one mind. So, and that's my belief. And the more and more that I live, the more I realize that is the truth. I mean, there was a time when I only thought of it as in an intellectual way, but now I really feel it. I believe it to my core. What do you think, Chip?
On that, it's funny because we were talking to some astrophysicists, and not just any. I mean, these are like Harvard, Brown, Yale, and they're talking about consciousness in terms of being an energy form. They're trying to do the math of the physics. It's still at a theoretical point in physics, I think, and that standard model always gets in the way somehow. But one of them speculated that these black holes that we're finally actually seeing now, we finally actually got a picture of one, last year, and so these things are real. But they're speculating that perhaps the black holes are like the brains of your part of the universe. They're carrying that collective consciousness, energy, consciousness maybe not in energy form, but perhaps some force, some subtle force that could impact energy or matter in certain ways. So instead of directing them, and they influence them perhaps.
Mhm.
And maybe these black holes are like your corner of the universe's feed for that collective consciousness energy. And they mentioned in the Ra book in one of the channeling sessions that they think that we think in terms of frequency and vibration, and if we can build our vibrations up, and they believe that the highest vibration is love. Love is the highest vibration that we could reach, and this Ra collective actually had a minor disagreement about that, saying because of the way we're designed, and with our atmosphere and gravity being what it is, if you look to the cartoons or the movies, Superman comes from a place where the gravity was a lot tougher to deal with. So he's super strong compared to the way we are in ours. And a lot of these extraterrestrial connections, if you will, or contact, are people that come from a different, how time travels differently, or, because of the rotation of their planetary or solar systems and in their galaxies. And we tend to think of time as this one straight arrow, whereas they know it's something that fluctuates with space and time are really part of the same fabric. But the highest vibration we could possibly reach is actually unity. And a lot of the things that you've been talking about are along those lines. That energy of unity being, we're all made of the same things. We're all made of the same atoms.
We're all the same touchiness in varying degrees. We're all we all share the same.
Everything, living or non-living, material or non-material, is still made of the same basic ingredients, those same basic atoms and particles. So we're all really are the same, So dichotomies, the good and evil, the life and death, the masculine and feminine, they're just all part of this same package. So they aren't differences per se; they're just different reflections of the same thing. And that's as high as our frequency or vibration can become without tearing our physical bodies apart, according to them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting. I'd like to know what you think of that particularly.
Well, I think that yeah, all is one. I mean, that's one of the basic concepts of quantum mechanics, is that everything is connected. There really are no separate things. It's just a continuum, one big organic whole that looks different to us. But one of the quantum physicists that I talked to believes that that the ancient rishis of India, whose philosophy became the Hindu religion, and what they believed was that Veda, Veda, Veda is the ground of being. And if you really look at what they are talking about, Veda is consciousness. And he believes that Veda and consciousness is the same as what they're looking for, quantum physicists, in terms of the unified field, that everything comes from that. And he has it even worked out to a formula that coincides very closely with what the rishis of ancient India talked about. And so, yeah. And as far as time goes, time is really all exists at once. There is, in this reality, we experience it like a continuum. The analogy I've heard that makes sense to me is that it's like time is like a river. And in this reality, we're standing in the river and it's moving by. But when we go into other realities, non-physical realities, it would be like getting up to 50,000 feet or 25,000 feet and looking down at the river, and you'd be able to see the whole thing from the start to the finish. And it'd look pretty static to you. And so It all exists at once. We experience it in this reality as moving, always moving forward. One of the people that I interviewed is a guy named Skip Atwater, and he was the fellow who, you probably maybe know him. He's the guy who founded the Stargate project for the U.S. Army back in the 1970s, and I think he headed it up and ran it for something like 10 or more years, from the late 70s to the late 80s. And it was a unit of the Army that spied on the Soviet Eastern Bloc countries using psychics. Remote,
the remote, the remote viewing.
Remote viewing, and they, for example, were able to see where the hostages were being held in Iran in the late 70s, in the where they were being kept, and they used that intelligence. Of course, the mission failed because the helicopters got sandstorm or something wrecked the helicopters, but they knew where they were from the remote viewing that unit did.
Yeah, and the irony is that it was the equipment that failed, not the remote viewers.
Not the remote viewing; it was the equipment that failed. But the point I wanted to make was that he said one of the difficulties of that remote viewing was that they would have to have some marker to figure out when they were seeing what they were seeing, because it could be something that was in the past, or it could be something that was in the future.
Well, excellent point. Excellent point.
Because in that non-physical realm where the mind goes to see remote viewing, there is no time. It's all at once, all at one, like I'm talking about, like that river, viewing it from 50,000 feet. Now, he would say that the future that they see is a probable future. It's sort of like Back to the Future, where, something can change, somebody can make a decision and change everything. But that if everything keeps going the way it's going, the future they see is the future that's going to be. So it's all very interesting and kind of hard to put your mind around, but we live in a reality that is not what it seems. It seems like everything is separate, when really it's all one, and we're part of it.
Yeah, and I don't know whether to be happy about it or not, but they ever since they did that one experiment where they would be able to feed particles, break atoms down into particles, photons, and they would break them down so they could feed them little pieces through this little hole in the wire. It's like
you're talking about the double split.
The double split. Ever since that, it's not 50-50 anymore. It's a wave of possibilities, So they assigned that to time, and
what that
don't get me started on that.
Yeah, the double slit experiment is very interesting, because what it demonstrates to me is that the mind, that your mind, my mind, the researcher's mind, are all. What the double split experiment is, this is an experiment that was first done in the early 19th century, and I forgot the guy's name. I think his last name was Young. Young put two slits and shined a light through them. And when both slits are open, what you get on the screen is a zebra pattern, where it's a wave interference pattern, where you've got, one wave overlaps another wave, it's brighter, and where the other one isn't there, it's darker, and it makes a zebra pattern. If you close one of the slits and you only go through one, you have a kind of a fuzzy, round shaped projection on the screen. Well, what the double slit experiment nowadays is that you fire one proton at a time, one photon of light at a time through the slits. And if you don't measure which slit they went through. If the researcher doesn't know, it makes the zebra pattern, which would say that white light is a wave. If the researcher is able to know, if he measures and keeps track of where each each photon went through a slit, you get a scattered pattern on the screen of where the photons hit. So his mind is causing the difference. It's a wave. If he doesn't know, if he does know, it's a scatter pattern of dots. And what that says is that the scientific materialist view of reality, that the only thing that exists is matter, cannot possibly be true, in my mind, because the researcher's mind is causing the difference, and they've got to be connected. And I think the thing about what did you say? It was potential.
Yeah.
That's
the wave of possibilities now.
That's throwing up a smoke screen. What it is the mind causes it. If the person knows, it's one way. If he doesn't know, it's the other way. It's simple as that.
And the best part of the whole thing was that he found out that he was unconsciously affecting the experiment, because he's got some atoms going on around him too that may influence the atoms that they're using in this experiment. So now they have to be completely out of the picture, because they could unconsciously bias the results of these experiments. And it kind of says, yeah, well, we're psychokinetic too, which I particularly like, but scientists were kind of very upset about that. And they'll never admit that,
What it says is that everything is connected, that there's really only one mind. And we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, but you go far enough, we're all connected. We all have one mind.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for them to find wormholes. That's Timmy's favorite thing, man. So I just wanted to bring that up, because Timmy loves wormholes at Einstein-Rosen bridge. And you would think if there's all this connection, we would have gotten there. Maybe another 7,500 years, maybe. I don't know. Or they'll have to change the standard model in order to find it. What do you think, though? I got to ask a Timmy question. And then I'm going to mute myself. What wormholes? Do you think we'll see them? Do you think we'll find them? Do you think that because there has to be that antimatter or negative matter that's around somewhere in the dark matter that they really don't know anything about yet? Think we'll ever find a wormhole?
I think they'll figure it out eventually, but that'll probably happen sometime in the fifth density. Right now, we're moving into the fourth, where the fourth density is the density of love. Where everybody treats everybody with the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And or the other direction is that's service to others, service to self. My book. And anybody wants to know more about the book, by the way, please go to my website, which is shmartin.com, and it's on the homepage, shmartin.com. But we have each a choice to make. We can choose to be service to others, or we can choose to be service to self. And as I look on TV, I see a lot of service to self people who are really out for living for number one.
Yeah, Real Housewives of service to self.
But the service to self folks are not going to be part of this fourth dimension here on Earth. Hopefully, if the Earth becomes a service to others fourth density reality, then all the service to self folks will reincarnate someplace else in a fourth density service to self reality. And they can have it, as far as I'm concerned. Ra doesn't make a value judgment about service to self or service to others.
Ra doesn't care.
He doesn't care, because we're all one, and there's the universal mind is non-dual. Everything's contained within, but they're going to be in a planet. So, all those folks that are out for number one are going to be over there together fighting it out.
Yeah.
And
Steve, we're gonna be going on break here shortly. I think maybe if we could at the end of the break, if we can get into sort of the history of Raw and the Law of One. If for those listeners that don't know what Raw is, maybe we can touch on that a little bit.
Very good. Yeah, sure.
Okay. You're listening to Supernatural Realm on WTRMradio.com. We are the Trim Radio Network. And you're listening to Supernatural Realm with Tim Roxbury and Chip Reichenthal and our guest, Stephen Hawley. We'll be right back right after this. Stephen Hawley Martin.
Yeah, it's okay. There's a Stephen Hawley that's a senator or something. Oh,
exactly. Why do people have paranormal or mystical experiences? Is there some science behind it they're not looking at? Why do some people have negative encounters and others don't? What are the best methods to use? And is there some new truth to them? Well, we'll ask these questions on the hit radio show Supernatural Realm with Tim Roxbury, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, with your co-host Chip Reichenthal on occasion, on the Supernatural Realm, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, on the Trim Radio Network, WTRMradio.com, where the truth gets even better.
Take the blue pill. Take the red pill. Take the blue pill. Take the red pill. Take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
That's right. Take the red pill, and I will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight here on the Trim Radio Network.
This is
it's
your
the
last
Red Pill
chance.
Reality Show. See you then.
After this, there is no turning back.
On the Spiritual Freedom Show on WTRM, the Trim Radio Network, you will hear the voice of an extraterrestrial master speaking through my teacher, Dr. George King, as it was recorded over 60 years ago. I'm Richard Lawrence, and every Saturday at noon Eastern Time, I bring you the wisdom of the 9 freedoms, with practical ways to give global service and attain enlightenment.
You're listening to the Trim Radio Network. We cut the bull and serve the truth.
There are actually ways to look at the paranormal realms without all the fearful stuff, and we'll do that. Not just paranormal, but supernatural, psychic, metaphysical, even extraterrestrial realms. There's kindness and benevolence if you look hard enough, and we will. Join us every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern for Kindness Beyond the Veil with your host, Chip Reichenthal. We've got great guests, fascinating information, cool topics, and we'll even make you feel better. Laugh a little. We'll welcome you and ease your fears. Join us Mondays from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Kindness Beyond the Veil with your host, Chip Reichenthal. Join us right here on Trim Radio Network, WTRMradio.com. That's where the truth gets even better.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
WTRMradio.com, your talk station.
Watch this.
I'm gonna take you for a day, take you for a ride, gonna get you over there on a passenger passenger side. I'm gonna put the radio on your favorite song. I'm gonna crank it on up and get you singing along. Hey, 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 alright. Girl, I'm digging on, hitting on you tonight. It ain't a maybe, it's hoping now, wishing now, wanna. It's a damn right, hold you tight, baby, I'm gonna. So what's it gonna take? What's it gonna be? We can pump it on the boulevard or kick it in the country. Me and you and me, money back guarantee. Love you every night and Daytona. I'm gonna, hey, 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 alright. Girl, I'm digging on, hitting on you tonight. It ain't a maybe, it's hoping now, wishing now, wanna. It's a damn right, hold you tight, baby. I'm gonna love you all night long till the crickets stop chirping. Girl, I ain't just flirting, I'm certain I'm working on a long-term plan. Gonna be your man, gonna put a little rock steady on your hand. Hey, 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 alright. Girl, I'm digging on, hitting on you tonight. It ain't a maybe, it's hoping now, wishing now, wanna. It's a damn right, hold you tight, baby, I'm gonna. Hey, 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 alright. Girl, I'm digging on, hitting on you tonight. It ain't a maybe, it's hoping now, wishing now, wanna. It's a damn right, hold you tight, baby, I'm gonna. Yeah.
And welcome back to Supernatural Realm on the Trim Radio Network. We are WTRM Radio.com. Chippy, you still there, my friend?
Oh, I sure am. Not only am I here, I learned a couple of things over the break because I just happened to go over to shmartin.com, just like Stephen here said, and I realized I've got 3 or 4 of your books and never knew it. So,
That's great.
I'm not worthy. I'm not. But yeah, ESP, how I developed my sixth sense, and so can you. It got a while back. That was back when I'm traveling, doing Paracons and everything. Got a copy there. Afterlife, the whole truth, your path to bliss, and the true Holy Grail. I've got somewhere in my book cabinets now, and now I can brag to my wife and say, ha ha, I was with this guy for the last couple hours and you weren't. Ha 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 ha.
Well, that's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And you know what? They're great books. I didn't read them all through. It was back when my attention span was a little shorter than it is now, believe it or not.
It's shorter with the Red Bull you're drinking, but yeah.
Well, that's because, it's got the Trim logo really right there on the can,
I like that one better, though.
Yeah. Well, so do I. I've got a cup of that on the way. And, you can get merchandise, Supernatural Realm Radio merchandise, Trim Radio merchandise, Kindness Beyond the Veil merchandise, coffee cups, T-shirts, and everything. See, you know what? See, you doing podcasts, you should do them here on Trim Radio. I think we should bring you over, have you on the network here.
Love to have you.
Hey, it's an excuse to hang out even more. So
I can be your producer, Stephen.
Yeah,
sounds cool. Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
well, that's pretty amazing. shmartin.com on the home about, which is that our world's in transition and you have a decision to make. Mm-hmm. The decision being whether you're going to be a service to self or a service to others. And
am I wrong about this? And this is kind of segueing into that, but it seems since this new normal began, we've been encouraging people. Both here on the Supernatural Realm, Timmy and I, and on Kindness Beyond the Veil, Timmy's done it on his Circle of the Universe show. You know, for all the times that we said, if I ever had the time, I would take up this, or I would do this, you know, do this hobby, or do this cause, or this course, or job, or whatever. Well, now we have all that extra time. So instead of looking at this thing like a horrible inconvenience and looking at all the things that are going wrong in your life, this is a chance to take the time. Now you have the time to do all those things you said you were going to. Isn't that great?
That's what we were saying before this, you know, when this pandemic started. You were like, you know, everybody's got to stay inside and focus on themselves. And you're like, welcome to my world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, how do you like me now? You know? Yeah.
I'm embracing it, you know, this new normal.
Yeah, until I got that thing, and you know, it's real, and I learned a lot of things from that, like you know, how valuable my life really is.
You even Circle the Universe a few times too, right?
Yeah, a couple of times. Saw death a couple of times. I mean, it was like that close. And he listens to our radio shows, so I thought that was good. I figured he'd take me, so you know I'd finally shut up, you know. But no, I guess he liked what we're doing, Tim. So
Michael Shabrasi likes that, huh?
Yeah, the Grim Reaper loves it. Yeah, and we love him back. Before the perfect segue into the latest book, I did want to just ask you one thing about, because you had a book about Edgar Cayce, and one of our best friends to this show, to both our shows. So, Dr. Gregory L. Little,
his wife,
and his wife. His wife is on the Edgar Cayce Foundation. I think she's
one of the directors. Yeah, she's one of the
the Edgar Cayce Foundation. I was wondering if you ever came across them in your travels.
No, I've interviewed Kevin Todeschi, who's the kind of the CEO of the ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment, which of course is Edgar Cayce's foundation. And I've also Peter Woodbury, who does a lot of lecturing down there. And I think it was 12 or 13 years interviewed Edgar Evans Cayce, who was Edgar Cayce's son. He's something when I interviewed him. He's since passed away. And we had a really good chat about his dad and growing up in that household. Edgar Evans Cayce actually went to Washington and Lee University up in Lexington and worked for, I think, Virginia Power, Dominion Energy. But I think he was an engineer. But he sat in on a lot of those sessions that his father had, you know, where he'd go into a trance and he would be asked questions and, of course, answer them. And fascinating man, Edgar Cayce, with something like 14,000 readings that were done on all kinds of subjects.
Sure. So did he rebel against his father like most kids would, or did he?
No, not at all. He talked about how his father got into doing all of that, how, you know, he had laryngitis, and he was hypnotized by, back then, I guess, a vaudeville kind of hypnotist who was able to actually talk. His father was, at that time, I think, working in a bookstore. Edgar Cayce's was working in a bookstore. And he developed laryngitis. And, of course, as a salesman in a store, he couldn't really sell because he had laryngitis. And he was hypnotized and was able to talk when he was under the hypnosis spell, I guess. And
see, that's the value of hypnotherapy. Otherwise, he would have probably been one of our best mimes.
Yeah.
Instead,
well, you know? When he came out of it, though, he couldn't. It would revert back to it was psychosomatic. So the doctor said, "Well, you know, why don't you try hypnotizing yourself?" What he did, and he was able to diagnose what was wrong, and eventually got over the laryngitis. But the doctor said, you did that so well. I've got some patients that I don't know what's wrong with them really, and why don't we try see if you can diagnose their problems? And that's how he got it. That's how he got into it, and he was very successful at that. And most of the readings are on health issues. People came to him whose doctors weren't able to help, and he was able to help them. But then, of course, people would start asking him a lot of questions that were beyond that, and, like, why we're here and so forth. And of course, some of the health readings, it came out that the problem stemmed from a previous life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And of course, Edgar Casey was a very devout Christian, and actually,
He was.
he taught Sunday school his whole life, practically. He lived in Virginia Beach at that time. And so he's really questioned this when he found out that he was talking about reincarnation. Of course, he didn't remember anything that he said while he was in this trance. It was all transcribed by a stenographer. But he would read about it later. And so he started reading through the Bible and saw that there were a lot of instances where reincarnation was mentioned, but they didn't actually use the word reincarnation. Like, for example, Jesus' disciples asked him who, John the Baptist was. And Jesus said that John the Baptist was Elijah. Well, Elijah was a prophet who lived 400 years before John the Baptist.
Mhm.
So it had to be reincarnation. And there are many other examples like that. But that's an interesting book. And what it is, it's the interviews that I've had with people like that. Edgar Evans Casey's interviews in that book, Kevin Tedeschi's, and Peter Woodbury's. And we talk about the meaning of life and what it's all about based on the Edgar Casey readings. So yeah, you can look on my website and find that. If somebody goes there, it's shmartin.com. Up at the top, there's a menu, and just click on books, and you'll see the books that I've written. And find that one, and click on it, and it'll take you to a page where you can find out more about that particular book. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
What for those listeners?
Chip is
Yeah, if you go to the homepage on that website, Tim, you'll see the new one, the new book.
I did. That's what we're talking about tonight, actually.
I know my mic was muted at the time, so I was doing my own Marcel Marceau, or potentially Edgar Casey if he hadn't gone to a hypnotherapist mime thing there.
Yeah, well, Ted, you wanted to talk about the raw material.
Yeah, the history of it for
Mhm.
the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that I'm going to have trouble remembering everybody's names, and I guess the names are not important, but there were three folks back in the early 80s. One of them was a PhD physicist who I think he was also an airline pilot, maybe taught, he was a professor at some college or other, but he had been channeling, he was interested in UFOs, and he was trying to find out about things by channeling non-physical beings, and stumbled upon Ra, who came through a woman who was one of the three named Carla. She became the instrument for Ra to speak to them, and they had channeling sessions over a number of years. And Ra said that he was a social memory complex, which I think translates as a whole society of people who have formed one gigantic soul, but each of the individual souls has their own identity and own consciousness, but they all combine, and they are operating out of the sixth density. And Ra explained these different densities. And I'll quickly run through them just so everybody get an idea of what I'm talking about. The first density is physical reality. Think of a planet with no life on it. that would be first density, just mineral, water, air, fire, but no life. That's first density. That does have mind in it. Mind is the basis of everything. It is the ground of being of all that is. Second density would be a planet with life on it, like plants, animals, but not self-aware life. Just, deers and dinosaurs and opossums and skunks. And then third density would be when life has evolved to the stage that it has self-awareness, where it can sort of metaphorically step outside itself and consider its own existence. That's kind of what we're doing now. We're talking about what life is all about. That's third density. But the hallmark of third density is that these beings who have self-awareness have free will. They also feel that they are separate. They believe that they are separate from everything else. And that is a necessary stage to go through in order to develop free will. It's also necessary to develop an ego so that they can fight for survival and worry about getting enough food to eat and so on and so forth. Then fourth density is what we are moving into. Ra said that we would cross the threshold and begin our journey into fourth density in 2011 or 2012. He said in 1980 won't be 30 years from then, so that would be in 2011. I think that's interesting because, of course, everybody remembers that 2012 was when the Mayan calendar ends, and people thought we would be moving into a new reality. Well, apparently Ra said that too. So anyway, fourth density is when we realize that we really all are one, that we're all aspects of the one infinite creator. That's what Ra called what is behind all reality, what all reality comes from, is the one infinite creator, and we're each holograms or fractals of that. And as we move into fourth density, we each need to make a choice between whether we're going to go on the path of service to others, which is what we've been talking about in the first segment of using our talents and skills to help others, or service to self, where we're more narcissistic and just want everything for ourselves. And that group of people is going to go to a different planet. Ra said that Earth would become a service to others planet. I hope he was right. He, she, it, they were right. Then fifth density is where, and fourth density, by the way, is the last density in which we live in physical reality, this three-dimensional realm plus time, four-dimensional realm. Fifth density is a non-physical realm where we concentrate on developing wisdom. That's when we're going to learn about, what was it you were asking about, Chip? Screw holes or something like that? But anyway, and sixth density is where the wisdom, wormholes. Sixth density is where wisdom and love come together. Fourth density is love, fifth density is wisdom, sixth density is where the two come together. Seventh density is where we begin, where we return to the creator, the one infinite creator. And you might say there's an eighth density, probably, where it all starts all over again. Now, what happens when we return to the creator? I believe that we each do keep our own individual awareness. Our awareness really is that of the creator. We just don't realize that. We are, in a sense, the creator who's experiencing his reality, or its reality that has been created. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the seven densities are. The raw material was channeled over a number of years, I think from 1980 to 1986 or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, Carla
And
Rucker. I remember
Carla Rucker.
Carla Rucker.
And she was like Edgar Casey in that she didn't know what was coming through her. But one of the guys, there were three of them, was the scribe. He recorded and transcribed the information. And the other one, the professor, the physicist, was the one who asked the questions.
Mhm.
And there's a tremendous amount of material, much more than I cover in that book, which you can get either by buying those books, or there's a website. I think it's called lawof1.info or something like that.
It's LL Research. Actually, it was.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, there was Don Elkins, who was the professor you were talking about, and yeah, I actually interviewed Gary Bean and Austin Bridges, who were part of the LL Research group, about that. Don couldn't make it that day. Carl is no longer with us.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's how I remember.
Yeah, there are five books in the series, and like I said, you could actually download them free, I think, from that website, and you could even listen to it on that website. Listen to the channel sessions, I believe, on that website. I read the books, just the trade paperback editions. But
yeah, you and me.
Yeah.
Actually, I got YouTube had the translations, so found some on YouTube. You got videos on YouTube too, so I
have some videos.
Recommend those.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
That's the raw material, and what has gotten me so interested in it and writing a book, even though I did read the first book 30, 40 years ago, close to, is the fact that I do think we are in this period when we are transitioning from third density to fourth density, where people are waking up to the reality that all is one, that consciousness and mind is the ground of being of all that is. And I believe that that's coming, and a lot of people think it already, and there are going to be even more as time goes on. And part of my mission, I think, is to help birth that new reality.
Well, thank you. Sincerely and earnestly, we thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you, Timmy, for finding Stephen here, because
you're welcome.
It's Timmy's gift. He just finds the most fantastic people. Wow.
We have a friend in Australia too, Danny Searle, that kind of has the same belief system as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting guy. He also has really the only person I've ever met that concentrates on soul ages. Like the expression "an old soul" or "a young soul."
Is that, you say, Michael?
Danny Searle from in Australia. Yeah, very, very neat.
Yeah, I that whole system, I think, has some validity of different ages of souls, and I think there's something like, again, there's 7 different levels, or each one has like 7 levels.
Yeah, the baby soul, the young soul, but 7 levels each.
Yeah, 7 is kind of a
running number,
mystical number. There's 7 notes in the musical scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and there's 7 colors in the rainbow. And what else is there? 7.
7 days.
7 chakras. 7 chakras.
7 chakras.
7 days in a week.
7 days in a week.
7 days in a week.
Yeah. That's all. Pythagoras actually credited as the world's first numerologist. Although there are people in the eastern part of the world that would diffuse that theory. So they said they were there way before Pythagoras came around. And that was in like 300s BC. And said, no, that's old now, where we come from.
Well, it's amazing that some of those ancient civilizations really knew a lot of stuff, probably more than we
They sure did.
Yeah. Well, thank heaven for them. They didn't have smartphones to look at all day long.
Another thing that Ross says is that the period of time time in the third dimension takes 25,000. We've had 3 of them on Earth so far. 75,000.
Yeah.
So
far.
if you don't move into the fourth density, you can repeat the third density for another 25,000 years. So that's an incentive.
I hope not.
That's an incentive to move on to the fourth density, because the third density is a difficult one with all the psychological suffering that we have to go through.
Stephen, what about somebody experiencing light beings in their home? Is that some of the fourth or fifth density?
I think the whole UFO thing and light beings and all that is, that's something coming from other dimensions, I believe. It's my opinion that, for example, many of these UFOs are kind of watching us, and they're not going to approach us until we're ready. They're not going to interfere with our free will. They're not going to land on the White House lawn and ask to go.
Take me to your leader. No, you picked the wrong time, man.
But eventually it's going to happen. In fact, I think the Department of Defense is supposed to release a whole bunch of information about that.
Yeah, and how about that? And boy, we'd love your opinion about it, because it seems, maybe it's just me. I know. Well, tell me too. It just seems strange that all of the sudden, the Pentagon's going to release official things, and from the last 2 or 3 administrations worth of stuff, and things that some of the former presidents said long after they were out of office they really wanted to know. They never saw any of that stuff, but would really like to. But all of a sudden now, there's not a day that goes by where we're oddly reminded of some sort of disclosure story, or the fact that disclosure is, not only here, it's technically been here since December, 19th of 2017. It was either the cover of the New York Times, the front page, but so much was going on that we didn't even pay attention. But now it's coming, and they, in a couple of months, they're going to overshare stuff. But it just seems like, just like that, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it's like, this is the thing we're going to talk about now. This is all going to come out in the open now. Almost because, we all thought the day of disclosure was going to be such a shock to everybody that's why we never would hear about this stuff ever. And the military is making sure nobody in the military talks about it, on penalty of death or whatever. And then all of a sudden, just like that, boom, it's going to be okay to talk about. And people in Pentagon are going to just open wide up about it all of a sudden. And it just, something about that rings suspicious to me. And I think
it's supposed to be this report is supposed to be released, as I understand it, in June, if not June 1, at least sometime in June. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, when I graduated from college, I went to work for an ad agency in Baltimore, and my boss was a retired colonel from the Air Force, and he had been a pilot, and he told me one evening over drinks that he was flying a big transport plane across the Atlantic, had a crew of 5 on board, and a UFO, a lit up orb, flew alongside his cockpit for half an hour. All of them on board the plane saw it, witnessed it, and then at some point it just shot off to the right in a way that would be impossible for any kind of, conventional aircraft. And he filed a report about it. All the crew vouched for it, and that was the last he ever heard of it. And so, there is all kinds of stuff in those files about UFOs that hopefully will be coming out pretty soon. And I do think it has to do with this transition that we're going through, this movement from third to fourth density, and that these UFOs are from more advanced civilizations that are they have contacted us in that Ra is one. Ra is apparently an extraterrestrial. He says that he evolved, or they evolved, on the planet Venus a couple of billion years ago. Now, people will say, Venus, that's impossible because Venus doesn't support life. Well, Venus may not support conventional life now, but according to NASA, as of about 6 months ago, they came out and said that Venus was probably hospitable and a possible place where life could have evolved a couple of billion years ago. It had liquid water, it had the right kind of atmosphere and all of that. And that's when Ra says he evolved. He, she, it, they evolved. Ra also says that he visited the Egyptians, pyramids and all, and then he gave them the same nation that he was giving through Kara back in the early 80s. But the Egyptians kind of screwed it all up, and
yeah, they did. He thought it would. He thought it was the time to show Earthlings the service to self thing. But what he discovered was that power-hungry people around him clung on to the service to self and said, "You know what? We can control masses of people this way, and that's the better way to go."
Yeah. So that's what happened, and so that's why it came back in the 80s through that group to give the message again, because it had been screwed up by the Egyptians. So, that's kind of the story of Ra, and there is a god in ancient Egypt called Ra, has a big kind of sun head or hat and a beak, kind of bird-like face that's in those hieroglyphics that you see. So maybe he's telling the truth.
Maybe it's that whole Eye of Horus thing.
When you think about the pyramids, that'd be impossible. I mean, how did that happen? Those stones that are 70 tons, way up high, that are fit within fractions of an inch. It's just something had to have happened for that to have happened.
Right. Well, it just so happens that we, because of our friend Greg Little that we were talking about earlier, his wife, it's a foundation, Edgar Cayce Foundation, has a friend, Maureen Clemens, and she deciphers these hieroglyphics in a completely different way. And it's kind of, like, for example, how do you get a line like Virginia is for lovers, for example, like you did? Look, I mean, if you think about it, it's a simple idea, but sometimes the simplest ideas carry the most weight and has everybody else going, how did I not think of that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that happen many times. Yeah. I'll tell you how Virginia's for Lovers came about, if you want to know.
Yeah, please.
I can't take credit for it because it was a group, but there was a meeting, and the art directors, copywriters, and count people, meeting around a table and trying to come up with a campaign for the state of Virginia tourism. Travel service, they called it back then. And the copywriter had 3 ads. The headline was, Virginia is for mountain lovers. That was one ad. It was, Virginia is for beach lovers. And another one was, Virginia is for history lovers. I mean, those were the 3 things that Virginia had to offer people who wanted to come visit: mountains, beaches, and history. Now we have theme parks and stuff too, but that was what the copywriter wanted to have as an ad campaign. When somebody said, and I think it was the art director, said, why don't we just drop the adjective and say Virginia is for lovers? And the rest is history.
Wow, the rest is history. Well, similar to that, this Maureen Clemens was looking at the hieroglyphs, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and she had one of those aha moments. where the way that she's interpreting him is what people, especially here in the U.S., we don't think of how life is like in all these other countries. We're so focused on. We've got 50 states here at least, and we got to focus on that. It's hard enough. But there are pockets of winds in northern Africa, I guess, that dwarf other places, and because it's some are mountainous and some are a lot of flatland. Those winds have weight, and a lot of these snake-looking objects or these long things that these goddesses seem to be carrying in the hieroglyphics, they're really for designing kites. So it was Maureen Clemens who believes that if you catch the right wind at the right time, it'll do all the work. You can roll these really heavy rocks or stones or whatever. They roll them using these wooden planks, and hundreds or thousands of these slaves would be pushing them for miles and miles for days until they finally reach this area. But they used all these sheets and these big sticks to create kites. And the kites could manipulate the wind to such a degree that you could use one to pick up this, 30-ton boulder and put it on top of another 30-ton boulder. And that's how they built monuments and obelisks and pyramids. And she even had an experiment. It was a college experiment in Mexico, where they had valleys like that, very hot, but these very unusual anomaly type winds, they could use to suspend and lift or manipulate these incredibly heavy objects with ease. And so some of these staffs that they're carrying are actually sticks they used for kites. So they could build up this momentum with wind and have that do all the work. And they said, sometimes, these 30-ton boulders would get carried away and they'd have to send another 10,000 slaves 40 miles to roll them back, so they could do the whole thing all over again. But, and it seems like, that the sliced bread being such a great invention, or the wheel, how did nobody come up with that before, whoever invented sliced bread or the wheel, that kind of thing. It just sounds so simple, that Occam's razor might apply. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. I just think that you might think cool. It's kind of cool.
I'd never heard that. That's interesting. I'd heard that it had to do with sound, that somehow they were able to use sound to vibrate and lift things. I don't know. I don't know how that works either, but
no, but it does. Well, they have these where they play these heavy sound vibrations, and they take these little piles of sand that are on plates, and they make these nice geometric shapes. These fractal like geometric, like they used to make with the spirograph. When you were a kid, they could get a real solid B flat. 3 octaves higher than normal. And make the sand move into these shapes that look like art. So, yeah, we had a neighbor who played his bass loud, and it ruined the foundation of our entire building. I mean, so yeah, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, it makes the sound because it's an actual physical wave. I mean, it has influence. I think the guy in the Coral Castle may have used some sound to move some of those things around. Remember, Tim, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago? It's that place in Florida where the guy did all these incredible things and in salute of Saturn for whatever reason. But it seemed to have this Tesla-esque idea of electromagnetics and use sound to lift and move some objects too.
Yeah. We're getting close to being out of time here, Stephen. How can people get a hold of your books? How can people get a hold of you? And maybe if you're interested, we could talk later or online about the possibility of you coming on Trim Radio to do your show. But how can people get over
Yeah. Well, the best way is to go to my website, which is shmartin.com, shmartin.com. And you can find my books there by the one we've been talking about on the page. If you look up at the website in the menu, you can click on books, and you can just click on one of the covers, and it'll take you to the page on Amazon where you can read the first chapter or two and decide whether you're interested. The way to contact me would be to also go to that website, shmartin.com, and click on contact. And there's a little form there where you can put your email address in and write a message, and I'll respond within 24 hours usually. I get a lot of mail that way, and I'd love to hear from people. I do. There's one gentleman who's read some of my books who lives in France, and he and I become pretty good correspondents. Every few days we'll exchange emails. He's a medium, and he has channeled extraterrestrials and non-physical beings too, kind of like Ra. Has a lot of information that really seems to correspond with what the raw material tells us. So yeah, I love to hear from people, and that's how to do it. shmartin.com.
Chip?
Yeah, this has been fantastic. I'll be going to that website all the time too. shmartin.com. A lot of fascinating stuff. The latest book, Our World's in Transition, and You Have a Decision to Make, available now. So check it out from the website, shmartin.com. For Stephen Hawley Martin, our phenomenal guest today. I just wanted to quickly say that Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, I know exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be here on Trim Radio doing my own show, Kindness Beyond the Veil, where we take a kinder look at the paranormal, psychic, metaphysical, extraterrestrial, and alternative healing realms. Our guest is Tom Conlon. He was an electrical engineer his entire life, and he's going to talk about how electricity itself has a really true impact on paranormal investigations in ways that most people don't realize or fail to understand or wouldn't even consider, and also how that embraces the ufology worlds, UFOs, extraterrestrials, and paranormal investigations, all impacted by electricity. Tom Conlon with me Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. right here on WTRMradio.com, and also through Restream.io on the Trim Facebook page. Tim.
And we're going to be streaming on Kindness Facebook page as well, aren't we?
Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. See, they're so fantastic. I keep forgetting my own luck. And you can get Kindness Beyond the Veil coffee cups and T-shirts, both thin and strong. They're cotton. Oh, they're going to be comfy. And you can find them on the website, too, WTRMradio.com. And you can see pictures of them on the Facebook page on Trim and on the Facebook Kindness Beyond the Veil page, both.
Yeah, Stephen, and that's something that we do with our show hosts is we create banners for them, show banners. We create merchandise for them, shirts, hats, you name it, for all our shows here to kind of help bring money and money to the network and to our hosts as well. You'd
fit beautifully here.
Yeah.
Plus, it's really that we're really staying in this mode. We're staying more out of the newsy, politicsy, scary stuff.
Yeah, and Pro is
making a beautiful
alternative network.
Yeah. So be a fantastic addition to the network.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that
offline out there. Yeah.
Sure.
Anything else, Chip, Stephen? Anything else you want to get out? We got about 5 minutes left here.
Okay. Well, guests first.
Well, let's see. Probably my best-selling book, and a lot of people are interested in, is Afterlife: The Whole Truth. And in that book, I talk about the research that has been done at the University of Virginia, and we talked about it in the first segment about the children's memories of past lives, but they are also studying near-death experiences and return of lucid mind right before people die, and other research that's been done up there. And I also go through a whole list of research that's been done, like at Duke University and the Windbridge Institute and so forth, on ESP, as well as mediumship and whether or not mediums can really communicate with the dead. And apparently there have been a number of double-blind studies done that verify that that is possible.
Yeah.
And so that's a book that people might want to check out, as well as I think you mentioned ESP, how I felt my sixth sense, and you
you're talking all the books that I have, and I didn't even realize it was you. Yeah, Afterlife: The Whole Truth, ESP, how I developed my sixth sense, and so can you. Was great. The true Holy Grail was a great. I mean, I just didn't know that was you, and here we are, right here together. And I mean that is awesome. So yeah, I can say with complete and total earnest honesty that you helped change my path. I've been looking into this stuff since 1979. My best friend all throughout childhood appeared to me at the moment of his death, and nobody said that's what death was. So similar to you and your flu and your near-death experience, and you come out of these things and there's nobody you can talk to. I mean, even back then you meet psychics and they couldn't say out loud they were psychics, or paranormal, same thing. Lloyd Auerbach was like the only guy that was out there with it, and he was on Oprah and David Letterman and at the Windbridge, and fortunately, happy to say, good friend of mine, great influence on me, but you've been a great influence on me too. I just didn't know it until today.
Well,
so thank you for your work.
Great to know, Chip. Thank you so much for reading my books.
Oh yeah, it means it means a lot, because you were there. It was an underground thing. You had to know people well enough to even know that you could go there with them. Just to talk about stuff that we were, talking about seamlessly. For the last couple hours.
Yeah, Chip, that's something. And the information in Stephen's books is, we've been talking about that for 6 years, you and I.
Yeah.
Had I known that you got the influence and the knowledge from Stephen.
Geez, had I known it.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's why I said, you guys are like minds, and here you are reading his books.
This is really cool. And of course, leave it to Timmy, because he's got this God-given gift. He finds the most incredible guests, But because you are a personal hero of my journey, that I know that, I'm going to send an invite to you for Kindness Beyond the Veil sometime. I'd like to have you on. If it's a Monday, 7 to 9 p.m., we'd love to have you on that show too.
Yeah, we'd love to do it. Love to do it, Chip.
Excellent. Good. Yeah, I like putting people on the spot, while we're live. It's fun. He didn't even squirm, which is, I like it when that happens.
All right, guys, I'm going to end the show here, and maybe we can talk, off air for a few minutes if you guys want to. But you're listening to Supernatural Realm with our special guest, Stephen Harley Martin. Great guy, and heck, we've been talking about him all these years and didn't know it.
I know, right?
All right,
Life catches up with you in the best ways sometimes.
It sure does. But up next.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I enjoyed it. It's been fun.
It's been our honor. Definitely.
We enjoyed it tremendously. So thank you so much. Good night.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks for listening and watching. We love you. Mwah.
Trim Radio Network.